Last few days, if you're lucky or unlucky, depending on your point of view, you've been traipsing all over the place in a frenzy of consumption. Presents, food, more presents, more food, indigestion pills. And each transaction has presented you with a choice. Is this what I want to spend my hard-earned money on? And is this where I want to spend my money? Because when the free market works, you should have plenty of choices. Then we can weigh up the options. For example, do they make me weigh up the vegetables? We factor in a lot of these things like ease, as well as cost, quality, service, and of course, one of the primary means that these brands and businesses share that information to the consumer as they appeal for you to spend your money with them and not their competitors is through advertising. So you can know your choices. That's how the system is meant to work. But unfortunately, that's not how it works here at GB News. Before the channel even launched, before we'd even broadcast 1 minute of content, a shadowy, unaccountable organisation started a campaign of smears and lies to intimidate and shame companies who'd advertise on this channel. And the sad thing is, it worked. But that was 3.5 years ago, and a hell of a lot's changed since then. It turns out that businesses catering to a vocal extremist minority isn't actually always best for business. Some companies have learnt this the hard way. Bud Light alienated their customer base and lost billions. Disney, the same. And now they're trying to turn things around because the silent majority spoke through their wallets, because the silent majority made a choice, and it wasn't them. And a lot's changed here. Once our critics smirked at our numbers, now we're regularly beating our competitors and even encroaching on the terrestrial channels. They said we were paid for by Russia. GBNews went the quip. A total lie. It should be apparent now that we're independent. Nobody over the last 3 years has told me what opinion I can express on something, even though it might be different to some of you out there, even annoy some of you out there. We met our promise of facilitating a free market of ideas, but there's been no free market of capital. Yes, there has been a gradual thawing as it's finally dawned that actually we're not the big bogeyman and that the threat of shame is just an illusion. And for those who do now advertise with us, especially those who've always advertised with us, we're grateful. And perhaps you're grateful in how you choose to spend your earnings. But there are many who still shun us. And I'd ask you to please take note of who they are, especially if they do advertise with our competitors. But flick back quick. Because another factor at play in your decision-making is the values of those who desire your money. Ask yourself, do those companies value you? What must they think of you? Do they not want your cash? Is your money somehow tainted because you want fair debate on subjects other news outlets willfully avoid or misrepresent? Companies have a choice whether to advertise with us or not. Don't let them forget that you have a choice whether to give them your business or not. But let's get the thoughts of my panel. Jonathan Liss, journalist and political commentator. Esther Kraku, journalist and broadcaster. And Charlie Rowley, former advisor to Michael Gove. But first, let's get an update of where Santa is. He's in Norway!
What? No.
4 billion presents. Holy moly, that's a lot of presents there. I hope that he's gone to my house because that would save me a lot of money.
Wasn't he over the Central African Republic?
He's very quick. He's very quick, Esther. He's there. This is Santa you're talking about. He's the fastest in that sleigh. He's doing incredible work. Thank you, Santa. So, Esther, what do you think? Were you aware of the boycott? Were you aware of when the channel launched and the big
furore? Yeah, I mean, you can't really
be
be in this industry without not being aware of that, I suppose. But I think what I do find, again, from what you said concerning, is the fact that this was led by a small cabal of companies that are not accountable to the public, and they don't have to be. They're their own private enterprises, exactly. But the small group, it's always kind of the case with like the vocal minority and everything that you see with sort of trans debate, immigration, whatever. Many of the hot topics usually have a vocal minority that are really quite not in line with the general public at all. They're very they have very fringe views, but they tend to lead the conversation and they make it. I hate the word toxic, but it's true. They toxified the conversation. And I think it's the same thing with this boycott. Unfortunately for these companies that have boycotted GB News from day one, their other options on terrestrial TV don't look very good at the moment. So, and like you said, GB News is beating a lot of these more mainstream channels. So unfortunately, they might be forced to just go where the viewers are and to put their politics aside, which is really how it should be.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jonathan, you were frowning a little bit. That's okay. That's what the channel's for. What elements did you disagree with in the monologue?
Well, I think I found when he mentioned Bud Light, because all Bud Light did was include have a very, very small thing where they gave some of their beers to a trans woman who drank them, and the backlash to that. I mean, it kind of just was so completely ridiculous when the right used the word snowflake in cancel culture, but it's complete nonsense. They only use the word snowflake in cancel culture to describe their opponents, but as soon as Bud Light sponsors someone they disagree with on ideological grounds, they go all in on cancel culture.
It's the right. I would argue the people I saw who are most upset by that were women, and particularly in the UK, women on the left, who felt like this is a facsimile, that this person is actually is ridiculing femininity. And if you've watched their videos, that's certainly what it seems like. Oh, I'm a girl because I'm falling down a hill. Women don't like that, and women were upset by it. And I understand that the right might also use that.
Well, there's been a very unholy alliance between, and I didn't necessarily want to talk about trans rights tonight of all nights, but
it's my favourite subject.
Well, it's my least favourite one, but here we go, we're in it now. So I think that
Jaguar, the latest effort for Jaguar, I think, was another one that.
Well, it's not trans, but that was the idea that it was this sort of asexual. It just felt actually very dated. Look, I understand you don't want to talk about that.
No. I don't have a problem talking about it. I think that there is. The point I was making, rather than the trans issue, is that the cancel culture exists on all sides. And what I find problematic and annoying about the right is that there's this complete blind spot. They kind of just throw all these words at their opponents, but they are absolutely guilty of it themselves. Talk about free speech, for example, slightly off topic, but the last Conservative government did so much to kind of curb the free speech that they didn't like. Sort of universities, the right to protest, all this stuff.
The government were putting through a bill.
The last Conservative government stopped people coming to speak in departments if they had previously expressed views that were against the government, for example. So look, no, it wasn't expressing hate. It wasn't expressing hate. It was expressing views against the Conservative government. So look, I'm all in favour of free speech, Josh. I'm all in favour of free speech, but I think it should be applied consistency, and you either have a free market or you don't. Now, it's not for me to tell companies where they should advertise, but if companies want to advertise here, that's great for them, and if they don't, then we have to accept that.
But what about, because what we have seen, Charlie, and thank you for your opinion, Jonathan, that's what this channel is exactly for, is at the same time, it didn't feel like it was fair or right, and because it was these companies following along a few people who were putting out essentially lies about this channel. I'd argue, of course, there are right-wing views on this channel, and that's fine. But the point is that we do allow free speech here, that there is plurality of opinion. I can't even say plurality. And it felt like suddenly that was it. Now we were persona non grata, and people then couldn't be seen on GBNews. Even like, Jonathan, we might disagree on a lot of stuff, and agree on stuff as well. But at the same time, I respect at least you've come here to vocalise it. We're seeing still that in terms of forget the financial boycott, we're seeing boycott from politicians, boycotts
but Josh, you will accept
from other people. Yeah, it won't come on.
Totally, and you've got to ask the question: is it the bosses, the CEO of these companies, or whether it's the PR, marketing, director of comms, here, there, who sort of might have a different sort of take or giving bad advice? Because ultimately, it's about business. And look, the British public are not stupid. If they don't like the channel, they'll tune out. If they don't like an advert or a product, they won't buy it. What you can't do, I think, is restrict your business's opportunity to advertise and allow people to make that their own choice. And so when you are on a channel that is growing, that is beating its competitors left, right and centre, I would have thought, if I was advised, if I was the CEO and I was advised by my director of comms or PR marketing team that I brought in 3 years ago, who advised me not to advertise for GBNews, I'd actually now, this year, be looking to advertise, because I'd actually be wanting to be in a market where the majority of people are actually tuning in. I think
there's something to be said about businesses. I think the overarching conversation is businesses shouldn't alienate their audience. Now, some companies might say, their audience, that their core audience may not watch GB may not like GB and then so part of their strategic business decision is we don't want to alienate the core sort of customer base that we have by being promoting our services or our products on GB. However, I think that is obviously changing because GB audience is growing, and it's growing more than sort of at a faster rate than other channels. But also, I think it's quite difficult because obviously there's the freedom to just advertise where you want, which is what all businesses should do. But the fact that, like you said, GB hadn't even broadcasted one single minute of content and it was already boycotted by these broadcasters, by businesses goes to show that it wasn't actually about, there was no business rationale behind this. It wasn't saying like our customers don't like GB News. They haven't even seen it, right? It was just, maybe someone in marketing or HR, like you were saying, was just decided, this is persona non grata and they were not going to go anywhere near it. And that's, unfortunate, but it probably should change, at least if business rationale is still the driving force behind how these businesses run. If it's not, if it's just the feelings of an HR director, then it's probably going to continue.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan, there's an unfairness to that. I mean, have you been stopped in the street? People recognise you from being on GB News at all? Yeah, and they're nice, normal people. Yeah. And they shop at whatever supermarkets that we all know, and yet...
They certainly don't like me online, but they're very nice in person.
Well, this is it. So, and people, I think, appreciate that, having those different opinions. So what I'm saying is that we're talking about regular people, different political views, yet somehow it feels like they're being rejected by these businesses.
Well, I certainly don't think that anyone should feel rejected. I would ask you, I mean, are you saying that GB News is a politically neutral channel? If I said that GB News is a right-wing channel, has a right-wing bent, would you disagree with me?
Because I'd say that's fair, but I would say...
Because there are no left-wing presenters here, are there?
Well, I'm left-wing. I voted Labour.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I mean,
but they're no balance. They're no balance. Like, with arguably the BBC, which is actually their mission. That's the purpose of the BBC is to inform and educate. Like all the other channels are not balanced.
Because I would say
Channel 4 is not right.
But I'd say also politics have changed, where it's not political parties, it's policies now, which are more interesting.
And a lot of the time, people's politics is not reflected by any of the major parties. I mean, we talk about things, and sometimes you're like, I don't know, I can't actually guess your stance on a lot of things, because I don't think our politics necessarily...
I don't think that, you are an interesting person.
No, but I don't even think yours as well. I don't think a lot of people, their politics doesn't fit neatly into the modern...
one-party system.
Well, not the Conservatives, not the Tories, not the Labour Party, not the Lib Dems, and I think that's where most people are. And so this begs the question, is there a business rationale behind boycotting someone like GB News, or is it just, you have someone that has very staunch views, that wants nothing to do with GB News, who probably doesn't even watch it, and that in turn is
I think that's the most frustrating thing, is exactly that, is people, going to a party and like, oh, I work at GB News, and like, oh yeah, I've heard have you ever watched it? Just watch it for 5 minutes, see people here from across the political spectrum and having different views, and even when, as you say, you support Tory, but you disagree with some of the policies for them. That should be ideally what the channel is. It just frustrates me that advertising seems to be part of that. And, I just want to be able to get my wages paid.
I mean, look, I would say that there is absolutely a need for plurality, and I think there is a space in the media landscape for GB News. And I think there's a space in the landscape for overtly left-wing channels as well, provided that they all abide by Ofcom content, Ofcom rules, and they have, balanced opinion throughout. That's fine.
I don't know about you guys, but one thing I really hope more people agree is this is probably not the best place. I don't really want to see politicians presenting shows on any station. I think there should be stricter impartiality rules, and I think having politicians have their own shows or sort of frontline, I have a big problem with that. And for me,
Lee Anderson.
Well, no, but the thing is, I had a problem when David Lammy did it on LBC, and I've been very consistent about it. I'm like, having a politician in a political party broadcasting his own show. I think for me, I don't really see the difference between that and party propaganda personally.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, look, I've just been told now. Stop talking about this subject. That's not true.